Hi, everybody. This is my talk, How to Make Games for 10 Years. My name is Kevin Cole. If you want to follow along with this presentation, you can go to how10.supertrystudios.com, and that'll just give you a peek at the same slideshow I'm working off. It's great to see a lot of faces from the game jam I'm running here, so thank you for showing up and for coming to my talk. So let's start with a brief introduction, because I'm sure I am pretty unknown to most of you. Hi, my name's Kevin Cole. I'm from Massachusetts. I've been making games for 10 years with my friends as part of a collective called SuperTry Studios. I've been doing this full-time as a solo dev with a few asterisks. I make things full-time. I make video games and podcasts and TTRPGs. And if you're interested in any of those, I'll put links up at the end and you can find them. But I've basically been working for myself for the almost 11 years. It'll be 11 in May. And I think that this is an excellent life, and I'd love to help other people sort of find their own path to longevity in the games industry. And I'm also going to touch upon in this talk why it's a little depressing that my 10 years of making games as a solo dev is seen as a pretty substantial amount of time. But if anyone here doesn't consider themselves to be a game dev yet, maybe you haven't finished your first game, or maybe you've been doing game jams but nothing's been made public yet. I don't have a whole lot of advice for you on how to break in, but I think the general wisdom on the internet right now is pretty spot on. I see this everywhere, which is just start. If you want to start, join a game jam. There is a game jam happening right now. You can find that at jam.supertrystudios.com. That's a game jam I'm running out of Hackfort. It's very chill. We have a couple of judges who will be playing your entries and will be shouting out ones they like. But if you're interested at all in starting, you can start literally today and contribute a game and become a game dev. And beyond just make games, I think if you do want to start now, focus on building your skills and finish things. Don't worry so much about the tools you use. Focus more on just making something, and if you're unsatisfied with a tool, put it down. If there's a specific tool that you want to use to make a game that's appealing to you, but everyone says it's bad, just try it. Make a short game. Focus on skills. Tools are always changing, but you can find your favorite tools, and as long as you build up your skills, they'll be available to you. And the other piece of advice, again, if you're starting right now, is to build your community. I think physical spaces are going to be much more valuable going forward in the future. That's kind of my prediction, and it's how I'm conducting myself as a game dev. I'm trying to unplug a little bit since we're sort of in a fracturing age of social media. I'm looking more at local spaces when I'm thinking about how I personally will keep doing this for 10 years. So just two little data points for you to start us off. So according to a recent survey, the average worker has less than 7 years of experience in the games industry. That was, we can interpret that data a number of ways, but I think it's sad to think that, more than half of people don't make it to their 7th year of an industry job, a solo dev job, whatever. If you're making games, folks tend to either burn out or get laid off and do something else after that. So part of this talk, I think I want to address that and look at ways we can increase longevity in the games industry, but I will be looking at this mostly from a solo dev perspective. And my other piece of data is 75% of game studios on Steam have only released one game. Now, this is a bit of a interesting data point because I am part of that 75%. I technically have only released one game on Steam, and I've been doing this for 10 years, and I'm fine. Everything's going pretty good. But I think combining this with anecdotal evidence, folks are releasing a game on Steam, either saying that was a horrible experience and never making another game, or not making enough money to continue with their developer journey and burning out. So both of those data points, I think, are problems, and they point at stories I've heard from other devs who are either worried about their career in game design in solo dev, or are have already left, unfortunately. So the 7 years in one game, that makes me freak out, because I've been doing this for 10 years and I've made over 30 games, and I'm like, in my own estimate, I'm not even mid yet. Like I'm on my way to becoming the middle of my skills. Like I'm trying to get better. I'm learning so many things every day, and I'm proud of my work and I'm proud of my improvements, but there's so much to learn in the process of game design. If you look over here at my lovely animated GIF, that little bit of moving a platform and having a character stay on it, that took me 10 years to wrap my head around. I know there are like libraries and stuff to incorporate in your game, and I could have used a platforming engine, but I wanted to do it for myself. And it wasn't 10 years of constant labor to make a little pink-haired platformer character go around on a square, but it took me 10 years of making games before I could put all this together for myself. And that's like a really basic kind of thing. So I don't think 10 years is enough for becoming a master of your craft if you're looking to do that in game design. And the fact that people are burning out after 7 years makes me sad, because there's so much potential being wasted there. One of the things I see a lot in people starting out is, especially if they're starting out like recently now, a repeated quote I hear is, I just want to get better and make cool stuff. And I think this is a great goal, and it makes me really sad that this puts you in a precarious position of a lot of people. If you're just in this to get better and make cool stuff, people think you're not thinking about profit. You're not thinking like a business person. That doesn't have to be the case. We can value different things and we can conduct ourselves in different manners. But in general, I think a lot of the examples surrounding other game devs are heavily leaning into tech and business solutions. And maybe we can reformat that a little bit if we want to increase our longevity as artists. We can sort of look to other career artists on how to increase the longevity of our careers. When I first pitched this talk to Mike, who's the organizer here, he asked me what I wanted to talk about, and I said, well, I just finished up 10 years of game development. What if I do a talk called how to make games for 10 years? And he's like, great, it's a great title, I'll put it in. And then I was like, this will be easy. I'll just tell you guys my life story. Like, I quit my job in 2013 and I did a Kickstarter and all my friends showed up and it went really well, which all happened. But none of that is helpful to you, because after Mighty Number 9, like, people started trusting Kickstarter way less in terms of games. And I got pretty far over the last 10 years by building an audience on Twitter, and Twitter is becoming less viable. It's not even Twitter anymore. We're in a bit of a fracturing age, which I'll refer to as encrapification to keep this family friendly. But we're seeing a lot of stable portions of the internet, especially places to organize, kind of going away. And we're seeing a lot of the dark side of venture capital funded tools. Like Unity had its big freak out back in September, which made a lot of people distrust that Unity had their best interests in mind when it was trying to charge for like the download or something. There's a lot of anxiety right now in games, because it seems like all of these firm tactics and systems and resources are disappearing out from under our feet. And even people who've been doing this a long time aren't really sure how to keep going. So that's why I'm not going to go year by year through the last 10 years of my life. And I've also done that elsewhere. If you want to listen to this very embarrassingly titled podcast interview I did with my friend Laser called Starting a Studio in Your Mom's House, which I did. And shout out to my mom, because she is cool. Yeah, moms. So how did SuperTry stay a thing for 10 years if I'm not going to just tell you go in a time machine and go back to 2013 and do a Kickstarter, because apparently that was a really good year to do it. So here are a few lessons that I think kind of apply to anyone. Diversify that income. I earn money through Kickstarter, through Steam, through itch. We're very heavily Patreon funded right now. Both for my podcast ventures and for my game dev ventures. Patreon is really nice right now, and getting that steady paycheck is great. But I am a little scared of it because, again, the bullet point is called diversified income. And right now we're very heavily leaning on Patreon, which is venture capital funded, could disappear at any time. Maybe good to diversify that income, maybe look at a Substack, maybe look elsewhere. But if the resources around us are going to continue to fail, it makes sense to spread out. And if you're trying to establish yourself, it makes sense to spread out so that no one who would give you money, who would support you, has a reason to go somewhere else. On less of the consumer-facing side, I've had opportunities to do game dev contract work where I've made small games for different businesses, for educational companies. I've sold licenses to my browser playable games. If you're considering one way to do your game jam game this over the next 48 hours, maybe make an educational game, because I've sold licenses to my educational games just because they're kind of family friendly, and they got bought. So there's lots of ways to make money with the skills you acquire in game dev, but it's important not to get too comfortable, not to lean on Steam too much, not to lean on Patreon so much. Pick up gigs, keep it diversified, and if something fails, then not everything goes away. This next point is a very quirky thing I do, but I use a lot of beige software. I use a lot of stuff that doesn't update, that I don't have to pay for every month. I use GameMaker 1.4, and GameMaker 2 is out there, and it's great, and it's updating. But I use GameMaker 1.4 because I know it, and I know everything it can do, and I know everything it can't. It's very familiar, and I have a good handle on it. I'm not saying you guys have to go out and get GameMaker 1.4. I'm not sure how possible that is, but work in things you understand and that you own and that are hard to take away from you. Same with Audacity. Audacity is going through some weird choices, but you can grab a 2015 build of Audacity for editing audio, and that works just fine. All of these kind of combine into keeping overhead low. The monthly overhead costs I pay for SuperTry Studios is $30. $30 a month is all I need to kind of keep my software and stuff running. And most of that goes towards shipping out books for my tabletop RPG. That's just maintenance costs for that, and shipping and stuff. And selling one book of my RPG basically covers all that overhead for a month. We've stayed a thing for 10 years because we have friends outside of game dev. I work with artists and writers and musicians who I pay in equity and in contracts, and I know them personally, and they're my friends, and I go see their shows when they play live, and I go see their art when they put it in galleries, and if they have a draft of something, I promise I'll read it, and I eventually do. But it's good to make friends outside of game dev circles in other artistic pursuits. One, because it gives you a lot of insight into how other creative people stay afloat and stay relevant. But also, a friend in game dev can potentially help you solve some of your game dev problems, but they cannot help you solve every game dev problem. They are probably going through similar issues that you are. So diversify your income, diversify your friends. The other thing that makes us steady is we have a very small audience. Again, I doubt many of you have heard of me, and if you have, thank you. But we have a very small audience at SuperTry that is very committed to keeping us afloat. About 6 months ago, I asked my patrons if I could throw deadlines to the side because I wanted to work on something more long form. The Patreon was set up as a month-to-month kind of thing, but I didn't feel like delivering a monthly EXE on this long-form game would be good for the development of that game. So I basically asked, hey, I don't want to do deadlines anymore. Will you still support me if we turn this over to more of a blog type thing? And we're very communicative about that. And no one left. No one had anything bad to say. Everyone was supportive. They all just wanted me to be okay. So I think when people are talking about growth and sustainability, they tend to cast a wide net. I don't think that's super necessary or super healthy long term. I think you can get support from your community. You're going to have to reveal probably a little bit more of your personality. A lot of people who support my game dev stuff come from my podcasts where I'm allowed to display my personality a lot more than in my typical game dev work. But then that gives them a more personal response to what I do. And I don't see a lot of game devs doing that, but a lot are trying as they're kind of incorporating YouTuber and influencer type strategies into keeping their careers afloat. And the last thing, and I really would be remiss if I did not mention this, the great Commonwealth of Massachusetts lets me go to the dentist for $0, and that rules. I don't really have to fear breaking an arm or anything. It's all covered. I think pushing for these initiatives in your home state or nationally, this can let people be small business people. This is in general a good thing to push for. I'm not really sure how actionable this is, but if you see people trying to increase state healthcare initiatives in your state, maybe talk to them, maybe figure out how you can help. I think it really is good for the health of small businesses in general, especially ones as small as me. And I'm really glad I get to have teeth. Solo game dev. One of the things about being a solo game dev is we don't really have a cultural perception of what a solo game developer looks like. When you imagine a painter, you tend to imagine a very specific French hat. When you imagine a novelist, you tend to imagine a guy with glasses or someone with glasses who looks very stressed and has a deadline coming up. We don't really have this cultural image. We have an image for influencers. We have an image for YouTubers. We have this idea. We have like these ideas for other tracks, but the solo game dev is kind of a chameleon. Maybe they kind of look like a tech bro sometimes. Maybe they kind of look like an artist. I don't know, but I like that we don't have this image of what the solo game dev is. But this opens you up to kind of, when you're a solo dev, you kind of put whatever you're pretending to be over what your actual work is. When I was first starting out, I was listening to all this music. I was listening to like Frank Turner and MC Front a lot, and all of these really indie acts who were, talking about striking out on your own and, jumping into the waiting arms of your audience and like living this life that's kind of precarious. And I'm like, okay, I kind of want to do that, but I'm not a musician. I want to make games. And I started coming up with these metaphors like, maybe doing game jams is like me practicing. Maybe going to cons is like me going on tour. And I kind of started to look at other musicians in my circle and in my friends and seeing how they got to keep being musicians. And that's sort of the model I stuck with. I think a lot of people right now, when they're looking to be game devs, they're looking at influencers and people in tech and content creators and trying to be like, how can I adapt my game dev life into an influencer or content creator style life? And if that's what inspires you to get going, do that. Like that's great. But I would caution you that burnout in YouTube and burnout in influencer roles on TikTok, life vloggers, there's a lot of burnout in more modern fields. They aren't really full of elders since the technology is so new. So if you're looking to keep doing this for 10 years, 20 years, Look at fields that have been active for a really long time. Look at people who make independent film. Talk to people who make art. One of the things, again, not to crow too much about the state of Massachusetts, but I do qualify for artist housing in Massachusetts, so I can. And Massachusetts does make a lot of space for independent artists who maybe aren't the most financially viable, and it supports those people. And I qualify as one because Massachusetts sees games as art. And I'm sure this is true elsewhere, but check on it. There are artist grants, and there's tons of ways to support yourself as an artist, as long as you and the state both recognize that's what you are. So yeah, solo game dev can be anything. Look to other creators who've been doing this for years. We don't have a whole lot of elders in the game communities. Like I said with that one data point earlier, less than half of people in the games industry make it to their 7th year. And that means we really don't have a lot of elders there. And if you find someone who's been making games for a really long time, super talk to them. They probably have a lot of cool stories. But otherwise, talk to other artists, find out how they've been doing things for years, find out how you can apply that to game dev. This is the Wild West. Be creative and use who you have locally. And speaking of using what you have locally, I'm just going to emphasize that point that maybe if we're looking to survive for the next 10 years starting now, we got to be a little more suspicious of certain tech platforms, because in the last couple months, we've really seen how those can just go away. I've already hit on most of these points, so I won't go on and on about it. But look, right now, I personally, when I'm looking to make it to my 20th year of game dev, I am looking to be way more active in my social environments in the physical space. I'm looking to find my way in to put my games up for display in farmers markets. I'm looking for ways to appear in surprising ways so that people remember who I am and know that I'm a part of their community. And I think that is more stable than a lot of spaces online. I'm super not saying you don't have to do Twitter anymore. Everything's physical now. Unplug, embrace caveman lifestyle. You don't have to do that. But I do think we have to de-emphasize living entirely online a little bit to become more stable if all of these resources are going to disappear. In general, I just want to emphasize the fact that you really can be anything. You can apply whatever style you want to your own game dev career. There's no definite path to success. If you're going for like a fast track, I do think you're probably more likely to burn out pretty soon. And if you use too many spaces that you have no control over, that are owned by other corporations or something like that, those can be taken away from you. So I'd advise you to avoid those. In general, I just think if you understand your own value, if you understand what you like to do about this, if you understand that you can really make this life into anything you want, if you can just kind of find the angle, you're going to have to compromise at times, but stick to things that are hard to take from you, which include skills, which include communities local to you. It includes friends, and if you can get it, healthcare of some kind. And that's really all I have to say. I wish I had better, more succinct, or more detailed things to say for your roadmap of becoming a game dev for the next 10 years. But in the last year, we lost so many platforms, and we've lost trust in many more. I think this is the time to get creative and to rely on physical spaces and to really understand that as long as you're putting out stuff that you honestly, truly love and you are building your skills, you can make it out there. It's hard, but if you think like a small business person and behave like an artist, you can, at least like you can make a good go at it. And that's my talk for now. If anybody has any questions, I'd love to open it up. Yeah.
What do you think about the fact that Twitch has opened up their
So what do I think about Twitch as a place to, I remember to repeat the question. What do you think about Twitch as a place to do game dev? What specifically are they letting you do there? Is it like Discord, or is it like just streaming game production?
Yeah, game devs have been finding a place on Twitch to be game devs as well as Twitch streamers at the same time.
Yeah.
Where they're literally streaming themselves develop their games. One of the largest that I know of right now is a game dev under the studio Pirate Software.
Yes, I've seen him.
Yeah, so he's developing his game on Twitch and has a huge following. He's getting paid to Twitch stream, let alone the game.
I would definitely talk to, doing Twitch streaming as a way to promote your game, if that sounds appealing to you, it could be a thing you could leverage. Personally, I wouldn't, because I'm nervous just sitting here talking to this room. And I'm not really sure how to zhuzh up my particular game dev processes. And then Twitch as a skill isn't something that I really want to pursue. But if you want to do it, if that excites you, I'd say go for it. But be aware that the Twitch streamer, we don't have a lot of data on how long somebody does Twitch streaming before they burn out on it. To me, it seems like in the vlogging influencer category, which sees people hitting their peak and then burning out in as little as 2 years. So I would be very conscious of your mental health, because streaming requires a lot of steady performance. You got to show up at a certain time. You gotta be entertaining, and after that, you got to put clips together. It seems like a lot of work. But if it's work that you enjoy, I do podcasts on the side because that's easy for me to do, because it's just talking to my friends. And that has proven to be pretty sturdy for me, and it's something I like to do. If we don't have a lot of data on podcasters, and I'm sure the burnout rate is pretty high among them too, but podcasting hasn't been around that long either. So yeah, I think if you're looking at Twitch as an arena, just be careful about what the demands of that platform are. Talk to other people who maybe aren't in game dev but are doing Twitch streaming. They'll probably have really good advice for how to make your stuff enticing, but they'll also probably have some warnings about the mental toll that being on stage that much can cause. So yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
I've got a couple.
Sure.
But I'll just do one at a time just to give everybody else. But you said you traveled around doing conventions as if you were going on tour.
Yeah.
Maybe elaborate on that. What was the impact on promoting yourself? Was it useful, or?
I find it tended to so what was the impact of going to conventions as if I was going on tour? I found that it helped me to make a better impression on people. When people are promoting their stuff, mostly through Twitter or TikTok or Instagram, they're mostly just showing their work, and that kind of creates a relationship between between your audience and you, that you are just kind of this content dispenser. When I go in person and show off my games and meet people face to face, they're often a lot kinder, and they're often more interested in me as a person, and that kind of helps feed into the audience quality over audience quantity. A lot of folks that just stop by my table at a small town comic convention ended up being fierce supporters of me on Patreon a few months later. It's a good way. In general, it's a good way to make a good first impression and to remind people that you're human. And when you see an artist, I think when you see a musician on stage playing in person, which is very possible over the next few days, you kind of get a sense of empathy for what they're doing. That you're not just seeing the content, you're not just seeing the thing that is produced for you, you're seeing more of the work that goes into it. So that's how I kind of look at doing things in person and going to cons. It's a way to establish yourself as a person who people might be interested in, and that interest carries over to your games.
Okay. And then, so you would say that it was really effective for promoting yourself and getting those Patreon subscribers?
Yeah. I'd say there was more carryover than I'd say about. I have about 100 people supporting me monetarily on Patreon right now, and I'd say, in terms of people I recognize from Twitter, and I have about 2,500 Twitter subscribers. So I think I maybe recognized maybe 20 people from Twitter in those 100 Patreon supporters, but I recognize a lot more people from doing booths and talking to folks and being in person and like just physically being around them and making a good impression. I don't know. I don't know what the number on that is, but it feels like a way higher turnover rate since I'm exposed to way more people on the internet, and I meet a narrower pipeline in person. But I do find anecdotally that results in people checking out my stuff a lot more, just because they've put a human face to it.
Sure.
Any other questions? Yes.
So I'm an academic.
Oh.
And I know that there's growing colleges and universities are having like game development majors and things like that. And I was interested because you've been pulling up some stats and research and stuff.
Yeah.
Have you seen? And I think in the last session you said you were an English major.
I am. Yes. English rhetoric.
Okay, wonderful. I'm just wondering, are you seeing in the field the rise in the number of programs that are giving kids a college degree in this area? Is that having an impact on the field, or is it? I'm just curious.
Game dev is so. Am I seeing a strong relationship between game dev degrees and game dev careers right now?
Are the people graduating and going into the field? Are they not burning out? Or it's just more noise? I don't know.
I think in general, what I'm seeing among my friends and among people and among articles I read about folks who are graduating with a game dev background, like a degree in it, right now is really, really bad for getting a job in the industry. Layoffs are rampant, and in the last 2 weeks, 4 of my friends have lost their industry game jobs. So, folks, right now this year, there's not a lot of hiring going on. There's a lot of layoffs. So if you just graduated with a degree in game dev, now's not a really great time. What I see from people who are teaching game dev and in a few GDC talks that are happening, that happened last weekend, I think the takeaway from educators is that you want to also teach folks skills that are that go beyond just a game dev degree. You want to teach, the basics of computer science, maybe the basics of business, and a lot of folks are recommending a game dev minor and a major in something else, potentially computer science, potentially something a little more stable. So if the game dev industry is being volatile at the moment, or if your independent career is not getting much traction, you always have that fallback of your computer science degree or your business degree, or even a degree in illustration, something that you can apply to a different sector and still work and get training and continue. I wish things were better. I wish a degree in game dev meant a job in game dev, but currently that is not the case. No.
Clarify, Boise State has a program, and
Yeah.
they're doing exactly what you said.
Oh, great.
They're diversifying, so they're coming out with lots of skills.
Yeah.
I have someone who's interested in the field.
Great. Well, I don't think it's wasted time to academically pursue game dev. I am self-taught, and again, I went for English when I went to school, and I think as long as you know the financial risks of any college education out there and approach that with patience and understanding, then yes, the things you can learn in academia about game dev can be valuable. But don't trust the industry for a second, because a lot of people up top do not know what they are doing, and things are currently burning and on fire. And being solo, being independent is always going to be volatile. There are ways. I've tried to put forward ways that it can be less volatile, ways that you can make a more stable future that I am personally going to follow, but I can't tell you for sure whether I'll be around in 10 years, but I'm going to super try. Oh, dang it, I said that. I'm very much going to try to be around 10 years later, giving a talk on how to do this for 20 years. Anyone else? Any other questions?
I just wanted to slip in an anecdote with
Oh, yeah, please.
question. One of my good friends is a graduate with a bachelor's in 3D art and animation.
Okay.
With a very strong emphasis on game dev. And when the game dev job is not there, they do architectural work, they do animation work. It's, you build up skills for gaming while you're doing the college.
Yep.
That can be applied elsewhere. And
Yeah, I was super proud when I was, 10 years ago when I was first starting out. I was really proud of the fact that I was full time. I was only working on games, and I would kind of put that everywhere as kind of a flex, being like, I am a full time game dev. And now I do devote a significant amount of my time per month to making video games, but podcasting is what's paying the rent for me right now, and video games are supplementing that income. But my main bread and butter is from essentially the marketing wing of my game dev house. So I think it is definitely valuable to diversify your income and to learn skills that are applicable in other situations, to either get that contract work, get that day job or something. And if that makes you be a game dev for longer, and if it causes you to burn out less, and it causes you to have healthcare or just be less scared in general, that's going to keep you around, and you're going to make it to that day when you can make that dream game. But yeah, that's a great anecdote. Thank you. Any other? Yes.
I also just want to bounce off the fact that just your point about layoffs and things like that. I've been in the game industry or adjacent to it for the last 20 years, and I know a lot of people that have lost their job that were in very stable seeming
Yeah.
positions. Like I had a friend who was like an executive director at Sony. His job is gone.
Yeah.
Like one of the most prestigious, most profitable companies out there doing it, and that job no longer exists. So yeah, and I will say also, just to your point, like it's really good to learn other skills, because generally those skills pay 20% more than they would if you were applying them to a game company.
Yes, the game. So that learning other skills definitely that are relevant to not just game dev, in order to supplement that income, in order to keep you stable. A really good idea. And also, folks that are at the top have been doing this for a long time. The games industry, especially now, aren't any more stable than any of us. The game dev industry is incredibly precarious. It's incredibly difficult to stay stable. You won't get paid the same amount you would for any other type of work. You won't get the same amount of respect or the same amount of hours. That's why I am not a corporate game dev. I'm very much living my little, artistic video game fantasy right now, and trying to stay self-employed for as long as I possibly can. Because I view that as a more stable route to being able to keep making games. As long as I control my skills, and as long as I control my spaces, and I have a relationship with a community on a platform that can't be taken away from me, I feel like that's how I stay in the game. Any other questions? Yes.
You mentioned burnout a lot. How do you not burn out, especially with all this other stuff? And then also kind of go with that. How much do you have like a specific amount of time that you spend on game dev, and then a specific amount of time like on the business side of it?
So how do I not burn out, and how much time do I spend on game dev versus the business side of game dev? So I've always kind of followed my heart on how to conduct my business. If there's a task that I have to do that I don't particularly like, or that I don't feel I'm particularly amazing at, I try to find a way to like it. I hated doing marketing, and I didn't like self-promotion, but I could stand talking about young adult horror fiction with my friends on a podcast, and that got traction. And at the end of every podcast, I got to say, and if you liked my silly words, please check out my video games at supertrystudios.com. So that became my marketing solution. There's always the task, but you don't have to do it in a way that is going to drain you. You can try and find a fun way to do it, because you have no boss. No one's telling you how to do this thing. As far as like avoiding burnout, I have gotten very close to burnout. My second year of game dev, I was a year over on a year-long project, and I just wanted to release this game. I had no money left, and I was just crunching every night, and I completely destroyed my tendons doing it. And I released the game, and no one cared. And I was just kind of sitting and icing my arms and thinking, do I want to do this again? Like, is this really worth it? And what I kind of settled on is I have to find a way to do this that doesn't compromise my health, that doesn't stress me out. And I have the power to do this because I own everything about this. I can change what I do. I can change what I work on. If I'm not feeling making pixel art, the great thing about solo dev is you can pivot to doing anything. If I'm not feeling making art today, I can go and work on audio. If I'm not feeling making audio, I can go and I can work on physics and coding. If I'm not feeling that, I can go and make sure everybody who's working for me, who's contributing labor to my stuff, is paid, and I can go and be like, I can go and look at my books and figure out how I'm going to work things for the month. There's always something to do. And anytime I get burnt out on one thing, I move to another thing. And anything that gets uneven, like if I just never figure out how to make art fun and I just have to cram it out, then I try and reduce the amount of work I do and be like, okay, well, art is not this game's selling point. Maybe mechanics are this game's selling point. It's all about I think avoiding burnout is about staying loose. And part of the problem in industry jobs, from my friends who are there and to hear them tell it, is they do not get a lot of agency in what they do. They are told to go forward and do something. There's some creative problem solving for them, but typically they're locked into like making the game that their higher ups want them to make, and less making their own decisions, which would kind of wreck me drive-wise, morale-wise. So I avoid burnout just by, keeping it fun, guys. And I understand why that's not really a solution when you're working for a corporation, because they don't care about you keeping it fun. So I can see why that would result in burnout. And I just really, really like doing this stuff. And I find the business side of this to be fascinating. And I have a lot of people helping me out. And I have a lot of other creative friends that I can be very emotionally vulnerable with. And then they can also give me advice. So that's why I haven't burnt out quite yet. I haven't put this down forever. I've definitely had points where I don't know what to do, and because I work for myself, and because I have an audience that respects me, I can put things down for a little bit, and I can walk away. I can focus on podcasting. After I finished my my second big game, I'd been 4 years into the industry, and I was like, okay, do I have to start a game right now, or can I do? I don't have a game idea at all. I don't know what to make. I don't know what I'd want to spend 2 more years on at this point. So I made a tabletop RPG podcast, and that ended up being really fun to make, exposing me to a whole bunch of new people who are interested in the silly things I say into a microphone, and it was great. And I just kind of had time to think about what I wanted to do next. So I think for the things I laid out here, that's how to avoid burnout. Is again that diversified income, the audience that just generally wants to see you succeed and doesn't see you as a content factory, and I feel like I'm missing another part of your question. That's okay. But yeah, any other questions? Am I still cool on time? Good? 5 minutes? Okay. Any other questions? Nope? Okay. One more.
I was gonna say, well, you said you have a lot of other tasks, like you literally do everything, including the pixel art.
Yeah.
When you start making a game, do you know exactly what it is before you start? Like, you sit down and make it. Like, do you do the full design, or do you like kind of start with a sort of a concept and then let that evolve as you make it?
That is an excellently fun question. Thank you for asking it. Do I make games knowing everything I'm going to do? Not at all. I have an idea for a moment or two when I set down to make a game. We were talking over in the jam room about coming up with a cool situation between like an interaction between a spear and a bubble and platforming, and how cool it would be if you could like stab your spear down, pop the bubble, and get a super high jump or something like that. And it's like, that's a moment. How do we get to that moment? Well, we got to do physics code. We got to make a character. We have to have maybe a spear object, definitely have a bubble object. So I come up with moments, and then I kind of make a little roadmap to how I get to that moment. And then on the way there, I'll kind of find the fun in the game, figure out a few moments. I don't write design docs. I do a lot of jam games, but these days when I'm working on bigger projects, which I'm doing on my Patreon, I tend to just kind of feel them out and build and just kind of build whatever seems right at the moment. And then I'll take a step back and I'll be like, okay, what's the next moment I got to get to? What's the next like cool thing? And how is this game filling out? Like, what does this need to be real? And I'll try and play the game in my head and write down how do I get there. So, when I started out and I didn't know how to make games, I definitely relied on design documents. But the more I started to make games, the more I found being fluid and more just writing like notes for myself and to-do lists and having these moments in my head that I had to get to, that ended up being easier for me to make a completed product that felt like a game that I'd want to play, that I'd enjoy. I think that's all the time we have, but if you want to talk to me, I'm here for like until Monday, I guess. Most of the time I'll be out in that big room sitting behind a table working on a game jam game for the jam that's currently happening here at Hackfort. If you want to check out my stuff, you can go to tree.supertrystudios.com. I have a lot of free games for you to play, and a few games to buy if you really want to. We just released a tabletop RPG called Space Kings. It's really fun. If you want to talk to me about any of this, come find me. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. It was super fun to put this together and think about how I'm going to do this for 10 more years, and I hope to see you then. Thank you, everybody.